I, I hope you'll allow me to take a moment. I would like to tell the three of you about two issues that are plaguing our sector. And then I would like to ask you, as I'm talking, to think about what, in your position as Lieutenant Governor, what would a specific strategic intervention look like? So this is one where I'm really looking for specifics. It doesn't have to be, and again, there's no right answers to these, right? But I want to give you these sort of two issues that are certainly top of mind for me these days. So the first one has to do with money for marginalized art makers and organizations. So because of the makeup and structure of the sector, there are small and mid-sized organizations across the state, in urban centers, in rural areas, in gateway cities, that serve audiences of color and audiences and participants of marginalized identities. But those organizations can't access the levels of public investment that the larger organizations, which are primarily white institutions, that they have access to. So this is a major equity issue, and I know it's not unique to the arts. I know just yesterday the three of you were talking about how this same problem manifests in government contracting. And yet, the arts is also, as you have all mentioned, wildly underfunded statewide at the executive level. The second issue I want to talk about, and these are really pulling threads that the three of you have touched on. In Massachusetts, biotech is absolutely a growth sector, right? It receives massive incentives, funding, and perhaps most importantly, workforce development initiatives and training that begins in the high schools. It cultivates workers for biotech, and it means that innovations that happen here are supported by people who live here. The arts sector does not receive this sort of executive level investment, especially in workforce development and training programs. And so young people leave the field or they leave the state due to the lack of opportunity, even though we have a wealth of higher education arts training programs. So when we lose the folks that train here because they can't find work here, or when folks who grow up here in our gateway communities, in our rural and urban centers, when they don't see the arts as a possibility, we lose entire generations of potential artists who, as we've already discussed, have the potential to create great change in our souls, in our hearts, in the ways we move through the world, right? So I would love to hear if you have any specific strategic interventions that could come from the Lieutenant Governor's office that might address one or more of these issues. There's a lot I just brought up, but I'm curious what your thoughts are about that.
I'm happy to start. We actually have worked on a cultural arts platform as Lieutenant Governor that I would hope to work on if I'm fortunate to get enough to be elected. And because I believe so much in this industry. It doesn't act like an industry all the time, but it is an industry, to your point, and how do we treat it that way? And I'll just say personally, one is showing up for performances, and two is paying for art. Two things we've insisted in my community. We don't ask people to give us their art, we pay for it. But here's a couple of ideas to pick up on what you said. One is working to establish a fund. Like, I can't say enough about resources, the necessity for it to be sustainable. And frankly, the time is now. We have historic resources in the state, both federal ARPA dollars, which are designed post-pandemic to help people that were impacted by the pandemic. I can't think of another community that has been impacted more, frankly, than artists, cultural institutions, and the like. So working to set up an investment fund, I picked the number of 25 million, higher, lower. With Commonwealth Arts Development Agency, we have development agencies for housing, we have development agencies for high tech. You talked about the other industries within life sciences. How do we work to set up a structure? Because we need a structure for this. We just can't all like it and love it and feel good about it. We need to put a structure in place within state government, which will allow us to raise money, to acquire and hold property, to finance the acquisition and development of cultural assets. Sometimes the most difficult part of funding at any level is those early startup dollars. When it comes to workforce training, why don't we have an Executive Office of Labor and Workforce and a program tied to the creative industries and to cultural workers? It's key. It's different than trying to career change into a STEM field. This is something that would be specific within regional workforce investment boards that we have throughout all of Massachusetts. A youth summer jobs program picking up on art and culture, so critical to get our young adults who have a passion for this, who have a desire for this, working in this field. With respect to thinking about BIPOC-led efforts, we can commit to multi-year funding and working with a cohort of BIPOC-led arts and culture organizations for support. Pick a number of organizations. Can we find 30 organizations that are doing great work? I could almost name 20 right now that are doing amazing work that we want to replicate in communities. Let's fund them. Let's not have them sing for their supper. Let's not have it be so difficult where they spend all the time raising money. That's time that could be going into programming. As we think about that, can we have a permanent function in the Mass Office of Business Development that's tailored towards supporting startup capital for creative businesses? Those industries, again, those startup dollars are really typical, really difficult to find. And lastly, a specific fund set up for disabled artists and arts organizations and programs that that feature disabled artists. Those are not off the top of my head. We really have given this some thought. I want to be clear, this is an area that I'm passionate about, that I've seen the value in my own community, that I really want to lean in. We don't have enough champions, frankly, in the State House for arts and culture that also understand the structure of governing. It's twofold, not just loving it, but also figuring out a way to make sure it's embedded so that no matter who is governor, this structure exists and can be funded.
Certainly ditto to all of that. And I appreciate the question, Alana, because I want to address the deeper structural issue behind that question. And we feel this acutely in Western Mass, because frankly, a lot of the most well-funded, highest endowed, largely white, largely male cultural organizations that have dominated the scene, so to speak, in Massachusetts are also almost entirely based in Boston. There's a few exceptions, but we're here in Worcester, which is in Central Mass, of course, does not have the same access to those types of institutions as there are in the city of Boston. And of course, obviously, communities within Boston don't have the same access to those institutions and those organizations. Just a little bit of context about the communities I represent. I represent some of the densest, most urban communities in Massachusetts. I also have a town without a stoplight. And I appreciate you also mentioning the lack of resources in rural communities, which is a severe problem in Massachusetts. We have urban communities, immigrant communities that are locked out of systemically locked out of access to art support, arts education, arts funding. We also have rural communities that have been locked out as well. So just a couple of things on this. First, this is where public money does have to play a role, because public money has to be used for public purposes, which is helping catch up the organizations that have been left out and the communities that have been left out for generations. So we need to make sure that, for example, money spent by the Cultural Facilities Fund is spent in the highest need communities, which hasn't always been the case, by the way, with that program. And we've done audits and we've done oversight in the Economic Development Committee to look at that. Why would some of the wealthiest institutions be getting taxpayer-supported cultural facilities grants when you have small community theaters, you have local pop-up art installations, you have maker spaces in gateway cities that are getting nothing? That needs to be looked into, that needs to be investigated, and it really needs to stop. Mass Cultural Council grants and other cash grants that are granted shouldn't go to organizations that have massive endowments. They shouldn't go to organizations that have multi-million, in some cases multi-billion-dollar nest eggs to support their programming. It should go to the smaller, newer, more emergent community organizations with less resources. And the other thing I would say is we need more visibility into some of these organizations, how they oversee their funds. Many of these institutions are massively powerful. We don't have to name names, but we all know who we're talking about. They're massively powerful, they have massive endowments, and they benefit from incredible tax subsidy. I mean, their endowments are not taxed. And so I think we need to make sure and look at, well, hey, they get that tax subsidy because they're supposed to be providing a public good. How much are they opening up their spaces to underserved communities? How much are they reinvesting or redistributing some of the money that they're generating from those endowments and from those savings into the highest need communities? How much proactive outreach are they doing to bring in and to support emerging communities? And very importantly, watch where the money is. Are their boards diverse? Are their trusteeships diverse? And are they making an intentional effort and a proactive effort to change it? Because, you know, what's in the past is in the past. What we need to focus on is how we change and improve for the future. And we've got to make sure that they're presenting that. You also mentioned investment in workforce and workforce development programs. This is something I'm very passionate about. I chair our Committee on Economic Development, where we oversee our workforce training programs, our voc ed programs. I mentioned at the beginning the work I've done with the adaptive music program. That's a partnership between UMass Amherst, the Community Music School in Springfield, and the Springfield Public School System. Again, it takes music teachers who are being trained at UMass and helps train them and support them in their special education work. And it takes special education teachers who are being trained at our local schools and universities and helps them learn and be integrated into arts and music education. That's the kind of program we need to replicate everywhere. And we need to make sure that we're supporting career development in arts and culture, because it requires a lot of expertise, it requires a lot of training, and it often doesn't pay very well on the other end. So that's another area of really important growth for us as a state, something as Lieutenant Governor I'd really want to take on.
Yeah, I too thank you for the question. So I think when I think about workforce development, I think, well, where does it really begin? And it really begins in our schools and in our child care centers. And are there arts programs that are embedded within? Are they supported? And then are they supported all the way through the lifespan? So as I have already mentioned, I moved from the city of Lowell to the town of Acton. And when I made that shift, one of the things that I noticed that continues on for, you know, if people want to learn a new craft or learn a way to paint a certain way or cook certain foods, that they have access in the town of Acton to continuing education as adults. I don't see that in every single community across the Commonwealth. That's one way to tap into who might be somebody who has that talent and that drive and just hasn't had the time to lift their head up because they're just trying to get through their day. This morning I was in Springfield and I met with folks at the Performance Project, BIPOC-led, first generation focused program. And I asked the students, I asked the young people, what are the things that you wish that government leaders would do differently? And what they said was, invest in us. We don't need things that are for adults. The casino is not set up for us. We don't have places to go to be creative. We don't have places to go to hang out with our friends that are safe, that are places where we're not going to get in trouble. Those are the kinds of investment opportunities that I think of. And then when we kind of play that out, you know, we had a lot of conversations at the state level when we rolled out legalization of cannabis. And we created a trust fund to make sure that there was equity and access to those funds. Because as Senator Lesser has pointed out, the folks who are on these larger institutions that do get the funding because they have the capacity, they also have the capacity to keep raising a lot of money because they are in the boardrooms with other folks who are their friends, or, you know, those kinds of networks and connections that they have. So how do we create partnerships with BIPOC artists, with folks who are on the ground in smaller organizations, in a way that they are also able to tap into the resources that exist? So creating technical assistance funds and technical assistance support, but also making sure that we are serious about investing in artists who are here. So as you're pointing out, they're not leaving. We need to have the support, I think, for very diverse artists, because we bring forth different cultural expression, right? I went to the Puerto Rican parade over the weekend, and I had so much fun listening to the music and the culture and the ways that everybody was celebrating Puerto Rican culture and history. Those are the kinds of things that we need to keep bringing forward and investing in those kinds of programs.
Thank you.
with real money.
Yes.